Today, we're heading north, way north to Alaska. We're digging into that big 7.3 magnitude earthquake on July 16th, 2025. It struck off the Aleutian Peninsula south of Sandpoint. Our goal here is to really unpack what happened, the quake itself, the response, how it felt on the ground, and, what it tells us about this incredibly active part of the world.
Absolutely. And this wasn't just a minor shake. It was a pretty significant event, shallow too, about 20 kilometers down, maybe 12 and a half miles, right in Alaska's, well, let's just say very active geological zone.
Okay, so 7.3 magnitude, that's serious shaking. What's the first thing that happens? The immediate concern must be a tsunami,
Yeah,
right?
especially there. Yeah, exactly. The U.S. Tsunami Warning Center, working with the National Weather Service, they were on it incredibly fast. They issued a tsunami warning covering a pretty big stretch, like 700 miles of the southern coast. Kennedy entrance down to Unimak Pass. That includes places like Cold Bay, Sandpoint, Kodiak. Sirens went off, the whole precautionary procedure. But, the tech we have now, the tsunami buoys, they sent back data pretty quickly showing, well, no major wave was forming.
Ah, okay. So the warning went out, but the data came in fast. It wasn't actually generating a big wave.
Right, which is why the de-escalation was quite rapid. First downgraded to an advisory, then canceled altogether just a few hours later by about 2:43 p.m. local time. And importantly, no threat at all to places further south, like Washington, Oregon, California.
So what did they actually measure in terms of wave height near the epicenter, like in Sandpoint?
It was tiny, just 7 centimeters. That's like, what, less than 3 inches, about 0.2 of a foot. Dave Snyder from the Tsunami Warning Center basically called it not an impactful tsunami.
Okay, so for you listening, that's a key point. A big 7.3 tectonic quake, but not a big tsunami. Why the difference this time compared to maybe other events people remember?
Yeah, it comes down to the specifics of how the Earth moved. The type of faulting, maybe the angle the plate shifted at, it just wasn't efficient at pushing up a large column of water this time. Totally different mechanism from, say, that famous 1958 Lituya Bay event. That was less about the quake itself and more about a massive landslide caused by the quake, creating a mega tsunami. Two different beasts, really.
That distinction is so important. Tectonic versus landslide triggered. Got it. So minimal wave, thankfully. But what about the shaking itself? What was it like for people actually there?
Oh, they definitely felt it. Reports from Sandpoint describe significant shaking. We heard from a resident, Kelly Bjornstad, who mentioned stuff flying off shelves, pantries getting emptied onto the floor, and it wasn't just localized. Apparently, people felt it over 600 miles away in Anchorage.
Wow, 600 miles. But despite that intensity, what about damage, injuries?
Remarkably, no reports of major structural damage or injuries. Not in Sandpoint, not anywhere else in the affected area. Things are pretty much back to normal later that same day, which is kind of amazing after a 7.3.
That really speaks to the building codes and preparedness up there, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It highlights that resilience. Alaskan infrastructure, especially in those high-risk zones, is built tough for a reason. And of course, they had aftershocks. That's totally normal. Some noticeable ones, like a 4.4 and a 4.0 magnitude near Sandpoint and Halibut Cove. Just the earth settling,
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. We know Alaska gets a lot of quakes. Why this specific area? What's the big picture here?
Right. The context is everything. Alaska's hit squarely on the Pacific Ring of Fire. The key feature here is the Aleutian Arc. It's this massive 3,000-kilometer-long boundary where the Pacific tectonic plate is actively diving or subducting underneath the North America plate.
So like a giant collision zone happening constantly, just very slowly.
Essentially, yeah. It's a convergent plate boundary. This constant grinding and diving builds up immense stress, which then gets released as earthquakes. It's classic textbook stuff, really. The state seismologist Michael West even called this event the kind of earthquake you read about in an intro to geology textbook. Just a pure result of those plate tectonics.
And what does an event like this specific 7.3, tell us about what might be coming next? You hear about patterns of energy release.
Well, it seems like this event is probably part of a broader pattern that's been happening recently. This particular section of the subduction zone seems to be going through a period of, let's call it episodic lurching. It's releasing built-up strain. We've seen several other large quakes, magnitude 7 and up, in this general area since 2020.
Lurching. So it's not moving smoothly. It's kind of sticking and slipping violently.
That's a good way to put it. It implies the region is currently in a phase where it's dissipating a lot of stored energy.
Does that mean we should expect more frequent quakes, maybe smaller ones, as the pressure releases? Or does it still point towards the potential for another really big one?
It kind of means both, in a way. The system is very active right now. This ongoing lurching definitely suggests that further large seismic events, M7 or potentially even bigger, remain a distinct possibility as part of this current cycle. It's a reminder the potential is always there.
So wrapping this up for you listening, this July 16th quake was, well, another powerful jolt reminding everyone of Alaska's constant seismic reality. But it also really showed how effective the warning systems and preparedness measures can be.
Absolutely. And Alaska's hazard picture is complex, right? It's not just the tectonic quakes directly. It's also the risk of those earthquake-triggered landslides, which, things like melting glaciers, deglaciation could potentially make worse over time. So it really underlines why continuous investment in monitoring tech, in scientific understanding, and crucially, in community readiness is just non-negotiable up there.
So thinking about this lurching subduction zone, this ongoing dance between the plates, what's the big question we should be asking ourselves about our long-term readiness for whatever this dynamic region throws at us next? We try to take complex stuff and really break it down so you can feel genuinely informed.
That's the goal.
So today we're looking at something really interesting that happened recently. July 17th, 2025. There was this earthquake, magnitude 5.3 off Sandpoint, Alaska.
Yeah, about 60 miles southeast, and pretty deep, too, around 32 kilometers, 20 miles down.
Right. And, 5.3 sounds like a pretty serious shake, doesn't it?
Oh, it absolutely was a genuine earthquake, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But, and here's the interesting part, the thing that catches your attention.
Yeah.
Despite that magnitude, the U.S. Tsunami Warning Centers,
Yeah.
they only put out a tsunami information statement.
Exactly. And that's kind of the puzzle we want to piece together today. What does that information statement actually signal? We want to unpack that, the whole tiered system of alerts they use.
And look at the incredible machine behind it all, the tech, the coordination, everything.
Right. So you, the listener, can understand these alerts better, avoid unnecessary alarm, maybe that warning fatigue people talk about.
And that information statement is key. It's very precise. It specifically means NO tsunami warning, advisory, watch, or threat is active anywhere.
So it's basically the system saying, okay, we saw that, but it's not a tsunami threat.
Exactly. Think about the chaos, the economic cost if every decent quake triggered evacuations. This classification is crucial. It stops misinformation, sure, but it also protects against that massive disruption. Keeps public trust.
Okay, so it's the official stand down, almost, after something that might initially raise an eyebrow, but, most people hear tsunami alert, and their first thought is...
Run for the hills. Understandable.
Yeah. So how serious can it get? What are these different levels?
Well, that's why we have the warning centers, the NTWC and PTWC, running 24/7. They have this tiered system designed very carefully to guide the right public action. It's about balancing safety with, not disrupting society needlessly.
That nuance makes sense. We all kind of know the big one, the tsunami warning, red alert, highest level.
Right. That means widespread flooding is expected imminently. You need to move inland or to high ground immediately. No hesitation.
Okay, top tier. What sits below that? Before we get back down to the information statement.
Below warning, you have a tsunami advisory. That's orange. It means strong currents and dangerous waves are likely, mainly a threat if you're in or very near the water.
So stay out of the water, off the beaches and piers. Got it.
Then there's a tsunami watch, yellow. This usually comes after a quake far away. A tsunami might impact the area later. It's a heads up.
The alert. Stay tuned for updates.
Okay. And then you have the tsunami information statement, green, like we saw on July 17th.
Yeah.
Basically confirms an earthquake happened, but assesses no destructive tsunami threat. No action needed from the public.
So that Alaska event was a perfect case study for the green level. They assessed it quickly, but tsunamis, well, they don't exactly stop at borders, do they? How does the U.S. system link up internationally? You mentioned something. Purple.
Ah, yes. The International Tsunami Threat Message. That's issued by the PTWC, the Pacific Center. It goes to national authorities across the Pacific and Caribbean.
Not directly to the public, then?
No, it's for the official agencies in those countries.
Yeah.
They then decide what local alerts, if any, are needed for their own coastlines based on that information and their own analysis. Shows the global cooperation, really.
Okay. And within the U.S., who's responsible for what area? You mentioned two centers.
Right. The NTWC National Tsunami Warning Center covers the continental U.S., Alaska, and Canada. The PTWC Pacific Tsunami Warning Center handles Hawaii and the U.S. territories in the Pacific and Caribbean.
And PTWC also does that international role we just talked about.
Correct. It wears two hats, essentially. Domestic and international for the Pacific and Caribbean.
And how do they make these calls so fast? What's the technology?
Oh, it's quite advanced. They have seismic networks for rapid earthquake detection, of course.
Right.
But crucially, they use real-time data from the dark systems. Deep ocean assessment and reporting of tsunami. Networks of buoys and sensors on the ocean floor that actually measure the tsunami wave as it passes in deep water. Plus, sophisticated computer models to forecast the wave's behavior.
Wow. Okay, so they get really clear picture quickly. Then how do they blast that information out, making sure everyone who needs to know knows?
Multi-channel approach. It's vital. They use NOAA, weather radio, email, SMS, Atom feeds for emergency managers, social media. They have active Twitter accounts at NWSNTWC and at NWSPTWC.
So, lots of ways.
And critically, they push alerts through the Emergency Alert System, EAS, which interrupts broadcasting, and the Wireless Emergency Alerts, WEA.
Ah, the ones that make your phone buzz loudly.
Exactly. Those go straight to mobile devices in potentially affected areas. Massive reach almost instantly.
That's incredibly thorough, which brings us to what people sometimes call the last mile, right? The federal centers give the big picture, the basin-wide threat.
But the life-saving details often come locally.
How
It's your local emergency managers, maybe law enforcement, who provide the really specific instructions. Things like exactly which streets to use for evacuation, where the safe zones are. That federal-local partnership is absolutely critical. You always need to listen to your local officials.
So the whole system relies on that connection?
Definitely. And it's not just a U.S. thing either. This whole setup, it's part of a bigger global framework.
Coordinated by.
UNESCO's Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, the IOC, they help coordinate tsunami warning systems worldwide. The U.S. centers are key players in that international effort. For example, the International Tsunami Information Center, ITNOW, works closely with the PTWC in Hawaii.
So the U.S. is both protecting its own shores and contributing to global safety nets.
Precisely. It's a dual role, domestic protection and international cooperation.
So looking back at that July 17th event near Alaska, it really was a perfect example, wasn't it? Showed how this whole complex, layered global system worked just as intended. It detected a real quake, assessed the lack of a tsunami threat, and communicated clearly.
Exactly. It prevented panic while keeping everyone informed. Textbook operation.
What really strikes me is how knowing about these different levels, warning, advisory, watch, information statement, and the system behind them, how it really empowers you, the listener. It helps you filter the noise, understand the actual risk level.
It does. It moves you from just reacting to, well, understanding.
So maybe something to think about as you go through your day. How does this understanding change how you might respond to future alerts? And thinking about that last mile, what role could you play in making sure your own community is prepared and well-informed? Where do you fit in?
Huge initial alarm, right? Given the size, but then the actual impact, surprisingly small. So for our deep dive today, we're asking, how does a major quake like that lead to, well, basically a non-event? And what can we learn from this sort of non-crisis?
Yeah, it's fascinating because this event, it really became a critical real-world test for our advanced warning systems. And what it showed really was a success story. You know, cutting-edge science working hand-in-hand with rapid coordinated action. That's the key takeaway here.
Right. So the quake itself, M7.3, off the Aleutian Peninsula south of Sandpoint, pretty shallow too, about 12 miles down. Those in Sandpoint definitely felt strong, shaking, things rattling, falling off shelves. But the actual damage was minimal, like broken bottles. And crucially, no serious injuries reported.
Thankfully, yes.
And right away, that tsunami warning went out.
Yeah.
Covered a huge area, something like 700 miles of Alaska's southern
A
coast.
really wide net initially.
Exactly. And communities like Sandpoint, Kodiak, they evacuated quickly, orderly, moved to higher ground. It showed, I think, a really impressive level of preparedness.
Definitely. People knew the drill.
But here's the interesting part, the twist maybe. Despite that big warning and the evacuations, the real-time data started coming in fast. And it showed the tsunami wave was, well, tiny, like maybe 3 inches above the normal tide level, barely a ripple.
Almost nothing, yeah. Which is exactly what the monitoring systems are designed to detect.
So how did they figure that out so fast? And what made the difference?
Well, because that data showed such a minimal wave, the warning got downgraded pretty quickly. Within about an hour, it went from a warning to just an advisory.
Right.
And then by mid-afternoon, canceled completely. And importantly, there was zero threat to Canada, Hawaii, or the U.S. West Coast from this. The key factor here was the earthquake's mechanism. It was what we call a strike-slip fault event.
A strike slip. Okay, what does that mean in simple terms?
Think of it like this. Some quakes, especially in subduction zones, involve thrust faulting. That's where one plate pushes up over another.
Like a giant paddle pushing the water up.
Exactly. That vertical shove displaces a massive amount of water, generating big tsunamis, but a strike-slip fault. That's mostly horizontal movement. The plates slide past each other.
So more like stirring the water side to side, not pushing it up.
Precisely. It moves water, sure, but it's far less efficient at creating that initial massive displacement you need for a really destructive wave. Now, it's important to add a little caution here. While generally less tsunamigenic, really, really large strike-slip events, like the M8.6 back in 1946,
Right.
they can still cause dangerous tsunamis far away. We saw that tragically in Hilo, Hawaii from that 46 quake. So, monitoring is always essential, regardless of the fault type.
Makes sense. And this specific event really put the U.S. tsunami warning system through its paces like a live drill.
Absolutely. A powerful real-world test.
And the coordination seems seamless, between NOAA, specifically their National Tsunami Warning Center, and the USGS with all their seismic sensors.
Real-time data sharing.
It allowed for that super quick detection, assessing the actual threat, and then changing the alerts efficiently. It's amazing, really. Since the big 1964 Alaska quake, those warning times have dropped from hours down to just minutes.
It's a night and day difference. A huge part of that is the DART buoy system. Those deep ocean assessment and reporting of tsunami buoys.
Buoys, right.
They sit out in the ocean and can directly measure the tsunami wave height as it passes, confirming or refuting the seismic models almost instantly. That real-time validation is the game changer.
So this wasn't just a one-off success. It's happening against the backdrop of, increased seismic activity in that part of Alaska, isn't it?
That's right. This M7.3 wasn't an isolated quake. It's actually the fifth earthquake magnitude 7 or greater just in this specific region since 2020.
Wow, 5 M7 plus quakes since 2020.
Yeah, it suggests a period of heightened seismicity. It's very likely part of a long aftershock sequence from the M7.8 Simeon earthquake back in 2020.
Still shaking out from that one.
Seems like it. And the probabilistic forecasts, which are sort of statistical best guesses for the near future, they show a high chance of smaller aftershocks continuing. And interestingly, about an 8% chance of another M7 or larger quake in the coming week, which is, not insignificant.
Definitely something to keep an eye on.
And it ties into the bigger picture, too. The latest U.S. National Seismic Hazard Model from 2023 reflects this increased understanding, often showing higher long-term hazard estimates for South Central Alaska. Plus, Alaska faces that dual threat, not just tectonic tsunamis, but also landslide-induced megatsunamis, like the horrific Lituya Bay event in 1958.
Right, a complex picture. So wrapping this up, the July 16th, 2025 quake, while powerful, really ended up being a strong validation.
Absolutely. A validation of the monitoring systems, the science, and importantly, community preparedness. It showed how decades of investment pay off.
It took what could have been a crisis and turned it into, a well-managed incident.
Highlighting the value of good infrastructure, that interagency teamwork, and communities knowing what to do.
So for you listening, what really stands out is just how vital that scientific understanding and proactive preparation are for living on our very dynamic planet. And here's something to think about. Now that you understand a bit more about different fault types like strike slip versus thrust and the power of integrating real-time data, how might that change how you think about evaluating or preparing for natural hazards, even ones that seem far away from where you are right now?